tonight for the opportunity you've given us to come here and to study your word. And I pray now, Lord, that as we delve into the depths of your word, that righteousness will spring forth and that we will see the types of people that you are calling us to be. And I just want to say thank you for giving us this time and for giving of yourself and your grace to us in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. We are at 2 Corinthians chapter 6. And the Apostle Paul here is going to be talking about supernatural ministry. And we talked about the ministry last week and how it moves us and moves forward. Now this week we're going to be talking about the supernatural ministry that God gives us. And we're going to see in this 6th chapter a series of 9 triumphs. 3 times the Apostle Paul is going to help us understand that we have triumph. We're going to triumph in the mind, triumph in the body, and triumph in the spirit.
Amen.
And so here we go. We then, as workers together with him, and notice the words with him are italicized, so that means that they have been added for our English so that we understand what is going on. Normally in the Greek, we would read it, we then, as workers together, beseech also that ye receive not the grace of God in vain. That's how it would read in the Greek. But to us, we read, we then as workers together with him, beseech you also that you receive not the grace of God in vain. So here the interpreters are helping us understand that we are working together with God. That this is an effort that is given to all of us. And I want you to see in this very first verse that we are not being we're not being told here by the Apostle Paul that there's not going to be work involved with our faith. In fact, I am convinced that faith requires work. It requires endurance. In fact, the writer to Hebrews, as Rita and I were reading Hebrews this morning for our devotions, it became very clear that Abraham was given instruction by God on what he should do. All right? Because we talk about Abraham did such and such and such and such a thing by faith. But we also have to understand Abraham waited 100 years from the time that he was given the promises until the promise of his son came to be. All right? And then he didn't even see all of the promises fulfilled that he was given. All right? And so endurance, perseverance has to be added to our faith. So in other words, we walk it out. We walk it out. We walk it out. We walk not by sight, but by faith. We're not always going to see everything. And I love God's surprises. Now, I love it when you get to a point and you wonder, how in the world is this going to be? And then boom, just all of a sudden something happens and it just blows you completely out of the water. You weren't expecting it, and God just, He just fulfills Himself. I remember a time. This was many years ago, and Rita and I had lost our job. We weren't working, and we were just picking up work wherever we could. And it looked like things were just going to really fall apart, okay? And I remember sitting in church, and there was this lady. She was sitting way across the church from me. And every now and then she'd do like this, and she'd look at me, and she'd wave and smile, And thought, this is weird, So I just kind of watch the pastor, and then I kind of take a peek, and she'd be like this, All right? And so after the service was over with, this lady looked me up. And she said, this is what she said. She says, God told me that you can be trusted. And I said, well, that's nice, So she says, I'm going to leave a bag here at the church for you. And I want you to have that bag. And I said, okay. So a few days later, the pastor's wife calls me up and she says, Dan, so-and-so left a bag for you here at the church. And it's sitting on the coat rack down in the foyer. So just come on in and get it. You can just have it, okay? So I went over there, I picked up that bag, and as soon as I picked up the bag, I heard jingling inside. I mean, I could tell there was at least change inside this bag, So I went out to the car, and as I always do, if someone gives me a check, someone gives me an offering, I don't open it up myself. I hand it to Rita, because I just let her, get the first blessing off of it, okay? So Rita opens up this bag, and inside this bag is a shaving kit, all right? And there's other little bags, some zippered bags, some just, what do you call them? Ziploc bags, okay? And they had money in them. Every one of those bags had money in it.
Wow.
And gift cards. And how much did we figure it came to? It was about $11,000, right?
Oh, my.
It was $11,000. And I called the pastor's wife. And I said,
Is it all of it?
no, I didn't say, is that all? Is there another bag? No, I said, hey, did you check out that bag? She says, no. She said, it just showed up here, and I was told it was for you. I didn't touch it, as far as I know. I mean, this $11,000 in this brown paper bag sat there for like 2 or 3 days,
Wow.
and nobody touched it. So, that was kind of a neat surprise. That was a lot of fun.
Yes.
It just kind of, every now and then, God just does something really out of the ordinary, What happened to it? Well, we just spent it, a little bit at a time. And we had house payments to make.
Oh, it was for, okay.
Insurance payments to make. And,
Oh, yeah.
we were behind on certain things. We went grocery
No,
shopping.
I just thought it was for...
Bought some new underwear.
Yeah.
What do you do with money when you get it, So, okay. So, we are workers together with Him, and we have to understand that. So we walk by faith, not by sight, but we need to keep walking. We can't quit walking. We have to keep walking. We have to keep believing. We have to keep waiting on God. God has things prepared. I just love what the Apostle Paul says, where he says, eye is not seen, nor ear heard, nor hath entered into the mind of man the things which God has prepared for him. God has things prepared for you and for me. So it's a work together. And the Apostle Paul said, if we lose sight of that, then the promises of God become vain.
Yep.
We say, well, this is never going to happen. All right? And we can't lose sight that God has things prepared for us. Hang on. That's
Amen.
all. That's all that Paul's saying here.
Amen.
He's saying, for he said, I have heard thee in an accepted time, a time accepted, and in the day of salvation have I helped thee. Behold, now is the accepted time. Behold, now is the day of salvation. A lot of us can quote that verse. Behold, now is the accepted time. Behold, now is the day of salvation. But I want you to see something here. The Apostle Paul does not say that salvation is a has-been. He says salvation is now. So my salvation is not past, okay? It wasn't one night I went to an altar and got saved, and it isn't just in the future that someday I'm going to be in heaven and I'm going to stand in glory with Jesus Christ, so then I will be fully saved. My salvation is now.
Amen.
Amen.
Salvation is a now word. Salvation is something that is happening. It is taking place in me right now. I was saved. I am saved. I am being saved.
Amen.
So it's a present tense word. And it's a constant thing. And what the Apostle Paul is saying here is that it's like a constant supply. Now, where Paul says, in the day of salvation I have helped thee. Do any of you have the Old King James? And do you see the word that is used there in the Old King James? What is it?
Separate.
Huh?
Separate.
Yeah, succored. All right, succored. An Old English term. All right. Now, Cordell, do you have the Greek word there that it comes from?
We can look it up.
Well, no, don't look it up. I'll give it to you, okay? It's bratheo. All right? When we see T-H-E-O in a word, what does that mean?
God.
God's in that word, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So it means the aid, the help of God. This particular word that is translated succor or help 8 different times in the New Testament, only in this particular case do we not see Jesus being revealed as the aid. The other 7 times, the word, when this word is used, it is a picture of Christ. People come to Christ and they say, will you aid us? Will you help us? Mm-hmm. Even in the book of Revelation, will you be our help? Will you be our aid? Okay? And literally, this is kind of a fun word. It's one of those big brother words. How many of you were big brothers? All right. So you had a little brother, all right? Brett, did your little brother get into trouble once in a while?
Oh, yeah.
All right, okay. With other guys, right? They're probably bigger than him. And did you ever go to his aid? All right. And, More than once. All right. That's what this is a picture of. It's a picture of big brother coming to your aid. So in other words, you're standing there shaking and quaking, and the playground bully is, I see David and Goliath, okay? The big bully is coming after you, and you're the little guy, all right? And Jesus Christ comes as your big brother to your aid. So in other words, he's standing behind you. So let's give it a spiritual understanding. The demons of hell are coming at you. And you're shaking. You're saying, what's going on here? You know it's a spiritual battle. And suddenly, who shows up to your defense? Jesus Christ. They see him. Hallelujah. And he's like your big brother. He's standing there, ready to defend you. Praise the name of the Lord. Okay. So salvation is a giving, is a present word. Now, verse 3 says, giving no offense in anything, that the ministry be not blamed. All right. That word blamed here literally means to give something a poor reputation. Mm-hmm. So in other words, when we are faithless, we give the ministry a poor reputation.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right? Donald Trump tonight, because of some of the things he is saying, he's giving himself a poor reputation. It's better to keep your mouth shut and allow God to defend you.
Amen.
And that's what Paul's going to say here now. So listen to what he says. He says, we are going to triumph, first of all, in the body. So verses 4 and 5, notice this. He says, but in all things, commending ourselves as the ministers of God, in much patience. Now, this word patience that is used here is not the kind of word that you think of where you just roll over and you play dead. All right? But this word patience, the way that this word patience is being used, it literally means that you're aggressive in your patience. That in spite of the fact that you are maybe not stepping forward, maybe you're just sitting someplace, but God is doing something on your behalf. Mike, you've been out working, all right? And you need to get those jobs. And once in a while, you need to go knock on doors, and you know that. You know you need to make phone calls and all these things, and God's going to fulfill. And then you've got those times when you're just knocking yourself out, and you can't get past first base with anybody. And you just need to sit down and think. And you begin just to praise the Lord, to worship the Lord, and all at once, a phone call comes. You just weren't expecting it. I had that happen the first Christmas after we left our last church, okay? Like I say, we had no job, and we were just depending on God for everything. And it was about a month before Christmas, and I was selling, if you'll remember at that point in time, I was selling specialty advertising. I was selling shirts and, different hats, different things, And I had a rule, and that rule was that I would make 100 telephone calls a day. Wow. 100 telephone calls a day to businesses, asking them if they needed, screen printed shirts. And at that point in time, that's all I was selling, was screen printed shirts and screen printed hats. Okay? And I was getting no place. And it was Thanksgiving was coming, then a month later is Christmas, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I said to Rita, I can't do this on my own. And so I just sat at my desk and I began to pray. And it wasn't an hour, it wasn't 2 hours. I mean, I prayed. And the next morning I got up and I said, God, I just can't make 100 phone calls today. I just need your help. I need your assistance. And again, I began to pray. And I began to read my Bible. And I just decided that I didn't know if anybody was going to invite me to come preach at their church for Christmas. But I love to preach Christmas sermons. Mm-hmm. You know that. Mm-hmm. And so I started putting together a Christmas sermon. And while I was studying the Word, putting together a Christmas sermon, a phone call came. And it was the lady from Central Roofing in Minneapolis. And she said to me, Mr. Cole, you called me a couple of days ago wondering if we wanted to buy screen printed shirts from you. And she says, I don't need any shirts, but she said, I have a Christmas party coming up in 2 weeks. And we had these blankets all purchased, and the man who sold them to us can't come up with them. She says, I have my logo all ready to go, but it's not screen printing, it's embroidery. I'd never sold embroidery in my life. Mm-hmm. Okay? And so I said, well, what kind of blankets do you want? And you know what? God really helped me do something. I found the manufacturer of those blankets. And I called the manufacturer and I said, I have a sale for 250 of your blankets. I mean, it's a sure sale. Mm-hmm. If you can guarantee that you get them to me. He said, I just sent my last order of 250 blankets to a store in Detroit. Mm. So I called this store in Detroit and I told him who I was. I just talked to Mr. So-and-so, and I talked to another guy in the shipping department of the company that you're getting. I know they're on a truck. They're coming to Detroit. They will